Hello friends, I am glad to see you again. Today I'm going to tell you about the HOA that fenced my house. You know that moment when your stomach drops so hard it feels like stepping off a pier into bottomless water? That's exactly what hit me the first Friday of May, right after I'd trailered my old base boat home from the lake. Instead of my usual view of cedar shingled siding and the weathered sign that says "Fish Stories Told Here," I found a gleaming white vinyl barricade stretching across the front of my fishing house like some oversized cage for an unruly pet. 8 feet deep, 7 feet tall, locked from the outside, and very much planted on my gravel turnaround. I killed the truck's engine, hopped down, and just stared. Nobody had asked. Nobody had warned. Nobody had left so much as a sticky note. It looked brand new, too. Concrete footers still glistened, and the contractor's tire tracks were pressed into damp clay beside my azalea bush. A neighbor trotted over. "Hey Clay, you didn't hear? The Harbor Oaks Association put that in this morning. Something about safety compliance." He shrugged the shrug people reserve for things that aren't their circus. Now, before anyone calls me reckless for owning a standalone fishing house inside a planned lakeside community, let me rewind. The cabin came first. My granddad bought the strip of shoreline way back when the county was nothing but farms and dirt roads. When development swallowed the area, the slick new subdivision wrapped around every direction except my grandfathered half-acre. The developers begged him to sell. He refused. Eventually, they recorded a weird little covenant. My land remained private property, no dues, no amenities. But I'd share the same street entrance. Granddad thought it was hilarious. I inherited the place, kept it rustic, no Wi-Fi, no TV, just tackle hooks on a pegboard, a fridge for bait, and a bunk for weekend naps. I live 2 miles away in the main neighborhood, so the fishing house is basically my man cave on water. Because my home address is inside Harbor Oaks proper, I pay the HOA there for sidewalks and the pool, but per the deed, the cabin lot sits outside their authority. For 15 quiet years, everyone respected that line like a drawbridge. Then Camden showed up. Camden is the kind of person who wraps holiday lights with a laser level and measures the length of your grass by eyeball. Last December, she got herself elected HOA president by promising to restore neighborhood prestige. She mailed glossy newsletters, revamped the website, and formed 7 new committees: trash can visibility, mailbox uniformity, even a social media tone committee devoted to positive color palettes and uplifting typefaces. I ignored the drama until a certified letter arrived in February demanding immediate access to my fishing house for a structural and environmental audit. Camden's reasoning: the cabin looked aged and she needed to ensure it wouldn't crumble into the lake, thereby lowering property values. She included a request for 2 sets of keys, occupancy logs, and permission to install cameras for safety. I wrote back a short civil no. The property didn't belong to the association. Their governing documents literally stop at my fence posts. I quoted the parcel ID, attached the original exemption clause, and wished her a pleasant day. Her pleasant day turned into a snowstorm of fines, $50 every week, for non-compliance with a reasonable request. I skipped paying. She doubled them. She taped notices to my cabin door, then to my truck windshield. I peeled them off each time like stubborn price tags. My wife Jade suggested we host Camden for coffee and calm things down. I called, Camden agreed, then no-showed, claiming a board emergency. The fines continued. Which brings us to that Friday, standing before a brand new fence I never ordered. I snapped photos from every angle, making sure to catch the survey pins I could still see sticking out of the soil. One pin was inside the concrete footer. Smoking gun-proof, the fence sat on my land. I phoned Jade, then my buddy Marcus, who happens to be a licensed surveyor. Marcus drove over straight from another job, tripod still strapped in his truck bed. Using his total station, he confirmed what my eyeballs already screamed. The fence cut 8 feet into my parcel along the entire western edge. While Marcus worked, I caught sight of Camden herself striding down the HOA-maintained path in pressed khakis and a polo embroidered with the association's lighthouse logo. She stopped the moment she saw us, tilting her head like a heron sizing up a frog. "Afternoon, Clay," she called, crisp as iced tea. "I see you've met the compliance enclosure." "Enclosure? Camden, it's a private prison wall." She clasped her clipboard. "The board voted on an interim barrier until your structure passes inspection. Quite standard. You'll regain unrestricted access once a licensed engineer clears it." "You mean once I hand over keys?" "Cooperation is always appreciated." She smiled a smile that never reached her eyes. Regarding the fines, failure to follow established directives is now at $250 per week. Please make prompt payment to avoid collections. I don't lose my temper often, but my voice climbed an octave. You're trespassing, Camden. That fence is on my title, not yours. She tapped her clipboard. Our surveyor placed all markers. Everything is within our easement. Funny because my licensed surveyor is standing right there with a $12,000 instrument proving the opposite. Marcus gave a polite wave, then went back to sighting through his scope. Camden's smile flickered. If you dispute, you may appeal at the next board meeting. Good day. She turned and marched off, squeaky clean sneakers crunching new gravel. I called the county sheriff's office. The deputy arrived, listened patiently, eyeballed the survey data, but ultimately said it was a civil matter. He advised me to talk to an attorney, so I did. Enter Attorney Harper, a coastal county legend known for carving HOAs into ribbons. His retainer stung like a hornet, but he practically vibrated with excitement when I slid the file across his mahogany desk. They fenced you out of your own structure? Delightful. We'll start with a demand letter, then sue for trespass, quiet title, and injunctive relief. That night, Jade brewed a pot of coffee at 9 p.m. because neither of us intended to sleep. We spread plat maps, photographs, Camden's letters, and Marcus's field notes across the kitchen table. By 1 a.m., we'd stapled together a binder thick as a phone book labeled Harbor Oaks Meddling. Saturday morning, I drove to the hardware store, bought a telescoping pole, and hoisted an American flag high above the cabin roof, visible even above Camden's vinyl monstrosity. If she called it a compliance enclosure, fine. Let her explain why Old Glory was now trapped behind her white wall. Sunday, Harper fired the first salvo. A certified cease and desist demanding the fence's removal within 5 business days, and all fines revoked. He gave them until Wednesday noon. Wednesday noon came and went. The fence remained, so we sued. Harper filed in County Superior Court for declaratory judgment, injunctive relief, removal of encroachments, damages for trespass, and statutory penalties under the state property code. He simultaneously recorded a lis pendens on the HOA's common areas, basically freezing their ability to refinance anything until the case resolved. It was legal judo, one swift move to put the whole association off balance. I expected Camden to fold. Instead, she doubled down. The HOA circulated glossy mailers titled, "Protecting Our Community from Unsafe Structures." They showed a stock photo of a dilapidated shack teetering over water, nothing like my well-kept cedar retreat, and claimed I'd refused routine safety checks. People started talking. Some whispered that my cabin stored illegal fireworks. Others said I kept fertilizer for homemade fish bait bombs. One rumor insisted I ran an Airbnb party pad and dodged taxes. The nonsense turned into nightly drive-bys, neighbors craning necks to peek at the fence. One stranger even tried the gate padlock like he had a right to stroll through. Meanwhile, Harper moved fast. He scheduled an emergency hearing for a temporary restraining order. The judge granted the TRO after glancing at Marcus's survey and the original covenant. The order barred the HOA from entering my parcel, accruing fines, or adding structures. They had 2 weeks to show cause. When the process server delivered the papers, Camden claimed she was shocked because she'd never received my cease and desist. She told the local community Facebook group that certain residents choose litigation over collaboration. Someone posted a meme of a drawbridge raising as a dragon breathes fire. My fishing house labeled Dragon Lair. I decided social media wars weren't my style. Instead, I stayed old school, kept the docket moving, documented everything, and waited for discovery to pry open whatever motivated Camden's crusade. Jade suspected something deeper. Maybe the board wants your shoreline for a private dock expansion, she mused. I shrugged, though it nagged me. On the practical side, I still couldn't get inside the cabin. Harper said not to cut the fence. Court orders are cleaner than bolt cutters, but the longer my tackle stayed locked away, the more my anxiety ticked up. Fishing is my therapy. So every evening I parked beside the vinyl wall, unfolded a camp chair, and cast a line over the fence into the lake like some absurd circus act. It made the point. They could block my door, but they couldn't take the water. One evening, while reeling in a modest largemouth, I noticed movement through the slats. Someone inside my enclosure, was walking the perimeter with a clipboard and flashlight. I yelled. The figure bolted out a side gate I hadn't noticed before, hopped a path rail, and disappeared into twilight. I called the sheriff again. This time, the deputy logged it as suspected criminal trespass because the TRO explicitly barred HOA agents from entering. Still, they'd need proof to arrest. Proof arrived 2 nights later, gift-wrapped by Camden's own arrogance. A heavy thunderstorm rolled through, turning the lake silver with sheets of rain. I decided to check on the fence's drainage. Wouldn't want water pooling against cedar siding after all. I drove over, headlights carving tunnels through steam, and there, illuminated in my beams, stood Camden herself with a pair of bolt cutters, slicing the padlock she'd installed. She swung the gate open, stepped inside, and began photographing my cabin. I hit record on my phone, rolled down the window, and called her name. She froze, mouth open, rainwater plastering her perfect hair to her cheeks. Lightning flashed. I'd never felt so cinematic. "Camden, you're violating a court order," I said calmly. "Smile for the judge." She sputtered something about emergency inspection due to storm surge. I didn't bother arguing. I just let the camera roll until she fled into her SUV and fishtailed away. Harper nearly danced when I forwarded the video. He filed a motion for contempt within 24 hours. But Camden's late-night escapade gave me something better. I finally inspected that side gate. It bore a rental company sticker, dated the same day the fence went up. The gate's hinges faced outward, meaning anyone could slip inside. So much for safety. While Harper carved his legal path, Marcus and I dug deeper into property records. That's when we uncovered a smoking cannon, not just a gun. 3 weeks before the fence appeared, Camden had applied for a variance with the county zoning board to extend Harbor Oaks' community dock, right across the cove, precisely where my cabin's tranquil view sat. The variance required a certain setback from neighboring structures, unless those neighbors weren't residentially occupied. If she labeled my fishing house a storage shed, the dock could jut another 40 feet, accommodating 6 additional slips. Slips the HOA hoped to lease for profit. So there it was. Camden's inspection narrative wasn't about safety. It was about downgrading my cabin to a non-residential accessory building. Lock it up, fence it off, call it a shed, then claim setback exemption. Her letters demanding keys weren't nosy, they were the first domino in a quiet land grab. We added zoning interference and fraudulent misrepresentation to the lawsuit. The buzz reached a boil at the next board meeting, a meeting I decided to attend in person. The clubhouse was packed, folding chairs 3 rows deep. As I walked in, conversations hushed. Camden, gavel in hand, adjusted her microphone. "Welcome, neighbors. Please sign in for public comment. We have cupcakes after. Sugar-free options available." Someone had taped my TRO video to the community bulletin board, QR code and all. People huddled around scanning it on phones. When public comment opened, I stepped up. Not to rant, but to read a 3-minute statement thanking the community for past years of neighborliness, outlining the actual covenant language, and explaining how the fence endangered my property rather than protected theirs. I ended with, "I believe in fishing lines, not battle lines. We can roll this back peacefully." The room broke into murmurs. A gray-haired resident raised her hand. "Camden, is it true you need that land for the dock expansion?" Camden tried to dodge, but another homeowner produced a printout of the zoning application. Suddenly, questions fired from every direction. Budget transparency, insurance risks, why legal fees were mounting. Camden banged the gavel too hard, cracking the wooden sound block. Meeting adjourned. It was far from adjourned. A recall petition started that night. Within 72 hours, over 60% of voting members signed, but I still needed that fence down and my fines wiped. The show cause hearing arrived on a bright Monday. Camden appeared with the HOA's counsel, an overworked associate from a downtown firm, not the heavy hitter they'd need. Harper presented survey exhibits, the zoning variance, and my storm night video. Camden's attorney tried to argue good faith safety concerns, but stumbled when the judge asked why the HOA installed a pedestrian gate to keep residents out, but left themselves a key. After 2 hours, the judge leaned back. "I find the defendant HOA lacks jurisdiction over the plaintiff's parcel, has encroached without consent, and violated this court's temporary order." He ordered immediate removal of the fence at HOA expense, suspended all fines, and scheduled a damages trial for the summer. He also slapped the association with a $2,500 contempt sanction payable to the county clerk and awarded me attorney's fees for the TRO phase. Camden looked like someone had sucked the air from her lungs. I almost felt sorry. Almost. Back at the lake, the contractor returned, this time to dismantle his own handiwork. I watched, arms folded as panels came down and the last post was yanked free. When the crew finished, Marcus drove a fresh survey stake flush with the corner painted bright hunter orange. We capped it with a solar light so no one could claim poor visibility again. That evening, I unlocked my fishing house door and breathed in cedar and tackle oil. I flicked on the porch lantern, cracked a root beer, and listened to bullfrogs trill at dusk. The wind carried faint sounds of nail guns across the cove. The HOA's dock expansion, now forced to stop short of my view because their exemption evaporated, all because I refused to hand over a key. I thought the battle was done. It wasn't even halftime. 2 weeks after the fence came down, the cove felt normal again. Almost. The water glimmered, loons called at dawn, and I could finally crack the cabin windows without staring at a plastic barricade. But I knew Camden wouldn't fade quietly. She was the type who presses a kitchen timer while making toast, just to keep things consistent. Sure enough, a bright yellow county envelope landed in my mailbox the following Monday. Inside, a notice of investigation, environmental discharge, alleging my cabin's sink drained raw fish guts straight into the lake. The letter gave me 72 hours to allow an inspection or face a $5,000 fine. I had no sink that could drain fish guts. The place relied on a sealed gray water tote I emptied at the marina pump station. Still, an official seal carries weight. Harper advised full cooperation with witnesses. So Wednesday morning, the county environmental technician met me at the cabin. He wore waders and a handheld turbidity meter, and within 10 minutes declared the water cleaner than the public beach. He noted the anonymous complaint lacked merit and closed the file on the spot. I wasn't surprised when he admitted off the record that the complainant listed a C. Mullins as contact. Camden's signature move: file a scare letter, wait for me to blink. Instead, I filed 2 new actions, one for defamation per se, falsely claiming I polluted a navigable waterway as textbook, and another petition under the state's frivolous complaint statute, which lets targets recoup costs when someone weaponizes government agencies. Camden was racking up liabilities like overdue books in a library that suddenly started charging $1 a day. Meanwhile, Harbor Oaks simmered. The recall petition had triggered a special election set for mid-June, just 5 weeks away. Flyers sprouted on mailboxes. Vote for restoration. Remove President Camden. Her supporters answered with pamphlets warning that outside forces seek to weaken our standards. Outside forces meaning me, though I'd lived on that street longer than the subdivision itself. Jade urged me not to canvass door to door. Let her dig her own hole, she said, but I wanted neighbors to hear facts, not rumors. So most evenings I walked the sidewalks with a quiet smile and a single stapled sheet outlining the lawsuit timeline, survey maps, and cost estimates should the HOA lose. I never asked for a vote. I simply showed numbers. One twilight, I met Trey, a high school senior who lived 2 blocks over. He read the sheet twice, then asked if he could volunteer. My civics teacher says local governance is where democracy lives, he explained, adjusting tortoiseshell glasses. I gave him a stack of handouts and a fist bump. First time anyone quoted a civics teacher to me since 1998. While Trey printed door hangers, Harper pursued discovery. Subpoenas went out for HOA bank statements, Camden's emails, engineering reports, anything tied to the phantom safety audit. Camden tried to stall, citing board confidentiality, but the judge shot that down in a curt order. Produce within 10 business days or face sanctions. Day 10 arrived. Harper's paralegal wheeled 3 bankers' boxes into his conference room. I met them there with Jade, Marcus, and a box of glazed donuts. We spent Saturday scanning ledgers, highlighting, cross-checking, making piles. By 3 p.m., Jade held up an invoice with a triumphant grin. Look at this, $2,000 billed by Argosy Consulting for dock feasibility study. Dated 3 months before Camden demanded Clay's keys. The invoice referenced Phase 2. Additional slips adjacent to non-member parcel. Marcus whistled. They were mapping expansion plans even before her safety narrative. Another gem. A line item labeled Community Engagement Video Production, $4,800, paid to a media firm Camden's brother co-owned. The video never surfaced, yet the payment cleared. Harper's face lit like a kid on a firefly hunt. Self-dealing, folks. Courts love a good self-dealing story. We bundled the juiciest documents into an amended complaint adding breach of fiduciary duty and civil conspiracy. Harper also requested a forensic accounting, arguing reasonable belief of ongoing financial misconduct. The judge granted it, appointing an independent CPA to audit 5 years of HOA transactions. Camden reacted with a newsletter, full color, 16 pages, mailed first class to every address. The headline, "Protecting Our Shores. The Truth About Ongoing Litigation." She claimed my court filings threatened the annual 4th of July fireworks show because insurance premiums were skyrocketing. She called me a serial litigator. This was my first lawsuit in 47 years, and included a blurry zoom of my cabin at sunset, making the cedar shingles look rotten. Residents emailed Harper copies of the newsletter before I'd even opened mine. His reply to Camden's counsel was terse. Another defamation notice, plus a reminder that upcoming mediation required good faith communication. Mediation day felt like stepping onto a chessboard where every piece could yell. We met in a neutral law office, polished oak table, pot of weak coffee, and a mediator with silver hair and a voice like NPR at half volume. The HOA brought 2 board members, their counsel and Camden, who sat ramrod straight but refused eye contact. Harper and I occupied the opposite side. Jade sat behind me knitting a scarf, silent support incarnate. The mediator opened with ground rules. Harper offered our terms. HOA removes all unlawful fines from my record, pays actual damages, survey costs, lost cabin use, legal fees, issues a written apology to be read aloud at the next community meeting, and pledges no future encroachment. In exchange, we drop punitive damages and defamation claims. The HOA's insurance could swallow the bill without bankrupting anyone. Camden's lawyer requested a caucus. 10 minutes later, the door reopened without Camden. Counsel explained she had stepped out due to sudden illness. Translation: she refused to sign anything admitting fault. Without a decision maker, mediation collapsed. We left with our original trial schedule intact: late August for the damages phase, October for the fiduciary misconduct claims if they didn't settle. Back home, Trey updated me on recall progress. 40 absentee ballots had already returned. 38 yes, 2 no. Momentum felt strong, but Camden still held sway with the gardening club and pickleball crowd. We needed absolute clarity. That's when the audit report arrived like a thunderclap. The independent CPA found $94,000 in unidentified withdrawals, 8 vendor contracts awarded without competitive bids, 4 linked to Camden's relatives, and a $12,300 community beautification expense that turned out to be bespoke patio furniture delivered to Camden's backyard. The auditor noted probable embezzlement and forwarded findings to the county sheriff. Harper filed a motion to attach Camden's personal assets pending judgment. The judge scheduled an emergency hearing. Camden's attorney argued attachment was premature, but the judge disagreed, granting a temporary lien on Camden's lakefront home. Word traveled at digital age speed. By dusk, residents clustered in driveways, comparing audit pages illuminated by phone screens. A grandmother named Lynn cornered me at the mailbox. "I've lived here 23 years, never missed a dues payment. That woman bought patio loungers with our pool fund?" She shook her head. "I'm voting yes twice if they let me." The recall election unfolded in the clubhouse gym under the watch of a county elections officer. Trey volunteered as a nonpartisan observer, wearing a plain badge that read, "Democracy Defender." People arrived in steady streams, clutching ballots like sacred coupons. Camden made a brief appearance, waving stiffly, then vanished. At 8 p.m., the elections officer sealed the box, ran the count, and posted results on the gym door. Votes to remove President Camden, 312. Votes against removal, 47. The cheer rattled basketball hoops. Someone popped a confetti cannon. Illegal indoors, but nobody complained. The board's vice president, an easygoing dentist named Arlo, automatically assumed the presidency per bylaws. His first act: announce a special meeting to appoint new officers and cooperate fully with ongoing litigation. Arlo called me the next morning. His voice sounded relieved and embarrassed at once. "Clay, the board wants to settle everything. We're sorry. Tell Harper to send numbers." Harper drafted a settlement. Reimbursement of every cost, $40,000 for trespass damages, double the actual appraisal of lost use, full retraction letter, and a provision that any future dispute must go to binding arbitration with a mutually chosen retired judge. The HOA's insurer approved. Arlo signed. Court rules required a fairness hearing since we'd already filed. The judge reviewed the agreement, nodded, and entered it as a consent judgment. Case closed. Almost. Camden remained individually liable for defamation and fraud. Harper suggested we could walk away and let the HOA pursue her for restitution. Jade and I mulled it over on a quiet evening at the dock, toes dangling in moonlit ripples. She said, "We've proven our point, let the community heal." I agreed, provided Camden issued her own apology. Harper relayed the offer. Camden refused, citing pending criminal counsel advice. So we pressed on. Discovery against Camden personally uncovered more: forged board minutes that predated actual meetings, backdated invoices, and one email instructing her cousin, the fence contractor, to install barrier immediately, jurisdiction questions irrelevant. The county prosecutor decided that was enough. They charged her with felony forgery of public records and misdemeanor criminal trespass. She was booked, fingerprinted, and released on bond the same day. Local news stations ran the mugshot next to aerial footage of the infamous white fence. Our civil trial against Camden lasted 3 days. Harper's closing argument might one day be taught in law school for its blend of homespun analogies and razor-sharp statutes. He likened Camden's actions to planting a counterfeit "Do Not Enter" sign on the freeway and then ticketing every driver for ignoring it. The jury took 4 hours. Verdict: liable on all counts, with $85,000 actual damages and $150,000 punitive for willful and malicious conduct. Given the lien already in place, collection was straightforward. Camden appealed, but the appellate court summarily affirmed. Her lakefront house hit the market labeled "motivated seller." Rumor said she moved 2 states away to live with family. As autumn rolled in, Harbor Oaks held its annual harvest picnic on the common green, the same lawn once dotted with Camden's branded yard signs. Arlo asked if we'd host a casting clinic for kids. I brought my best ultralight rods, set up hula hoops as targets, and taught a dozen youngsters how to flip a lure without snagging their ears. Trey, now freshly minted as a college freshman majoring in public policy, gave a little speech on transparency and homeowner governance. The crowd applauded, partly for his passion, partly because the smoked brisket was finally ready. Later, I unlocked my cabin, lights twinkling across the water. Inside, a plaque hung over the doorframe. "Property lines are lines, not suggestions. Est 1959. Grandpa had carved it, and I'd re-oiled the wood that morning. I sat on the porch rocker, Jade beside me, kettle on the camp stove whistling. Across the cove, the new, modest HOA dock ended 20 feet shy of where Camden had planned, far enough to leave the view untouched. Children hunted fireflies along the shoreline, their laughter skipping over the lake. Peace felt earned, not given. I thought about the fence, the fines, the sleepless nights. I wouldn't wish the ordeal on anyone, but I'd learned something enduring. Bullies rely on silence, on neighbors shrugging and saying, "Not my circus." Once sunlight pours in, whether from court documents, audits, or a teenager's door hangers, bullies wilt like weeds under a clear sky. Jade handed me a mug of honey-sweet tea. "To new chapters," she said. "To strong property lines and stronger communities," I answered. We clinked mugs, and in that quiet I understood Grandpa's stubborn grin all those years ago. Land matters, sure, but standing your ground matters more, especially when the ground you're standing on is undeniably yours. The crickets struck up their night symphony, and somewhere out in the dark water, a fish jumped. Free, determined, right where it belonged. The season slid from pumpkin orange October to a brittle November. The lake rimmed each dawn with a skim of ice that cracked like sugar glass by noon. The lawsuit was over. Camden's house had a sale-pending banner, and, for the first time in a year, I thought the drama spool had finally stopped spinning. Then a glossy, oversized postcard arrived at every door in Harbor Oaks. "Coming soon, Azure Cove Resort and Spa. Luxury you deserve, steps from your backyard." The postcard showed a computer rendering of a 3-story hotel, an event pavilion, and a private water taxi dock stretching halfway across our cove. My cabin appeared on the card as a fuzzy blot, literally airbrushed behind fake landscaping shrubs. If you didn't know better, you'd swear the place didn't exist. I laughed out loud until I flipped the card over and saw the proposed footprint. The new dock's contour clipped right through the survey line Marcus and I had just repainted neon orange. Jade studied the flyer, brow furrowed. "Do they even own that parcel?" "Not yet," I said, already dialing Marcus. Within 48 hours, we pieced together the cliff notes. A Denver-based real estate fund had scooped up the foreclosed golf course south of us, folded it into a shell company called Azure Cove Ventures, and filed preliminary plans for a 120-room eco-wellness retreat. The resort's marina component required either A, buying my half-acre outright, or B, convincing county planners to invoke eminent domain for economic development. The second path was unlikely, but deep-pocket developers don't always play by the rulebook. On Monday, I attended the county planning and zoning pre-application meeting. Picture a beige basement room smelling of coffee and copier toner. Azure Cove's rep, a starch-collared guy named Vaughn, opened with a PowerPoint touting green jobs and public lake access. Halfway through, he clicked to a slide labeled Existing Non-Conforming Structure. My cabin's silhouette flashed on screen, highlighted in red. Vaughn called it abandoned utility storage, incorrectly citing Camden's long-dead safety complaint. I raised my hand. Actually, that's my occupied fishing house, full and recent certificate of habitability, parcel 18372C. You'll find the county court affirmed it 3 months ago. Vaughn blinked. The planner beside him coughed into her legal pad, the kind of cough that really means, "You stepped in it, pal." Meeting adjourned. But the postcard did its damage. Rumors reignited, homeowners worried about traffic, and local business owners salivated over tourist spillover. The neighborhood fractured along new fault lines, job hopes versus quiet coves. Friends, thank you. See you soon.